So as we get started, first and foremost, from an agenda standpoint, I want to thank very much Travis Floyd from Summit Industrial Products for joining us for the session today. The whole purpose of today's webinar is to learn a little bit more about what Summit Industrial Products is doing with the BizNet suite of products. So what we're going to do here in a moment is I'm going to turn the controls over to Travis and let him talk a little bit more about what some of the challenges were that they were facing from a reporting standpoint. What solutions did they consider? What did they eventually decide on? What are they doing with those solutions today? And then I've taken some of the notes from Travis as far as what he's doing with the BizNet products today. And I'm going to take everybody through a very brief demonstration, a live demonstration of how to create some of what Travis is doing. And then, of course, we'll have time for Q&A towards the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass controls over to Travis, and he should be able to take us through the rest of the session. Travis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. I am Travis Floyd with Summit Industrial Products. I'm the controller here. Summit Industrial Products was established in 1985. Here in Tyler, we were acquired then by a German company in 1995. And then through that time, there's also been other different mergers and acquisitions. Through the process of that, we have an IT hub that's actually in Michigan that services actually about 5 different companies for North America. And that would be different companies that is related to, I'm trying to do the slide right now. Crystal, could you do the slide right there to get to the next page?
I sure can.
I don't think I'm, thank you. The different cities that we have are Texas, New Hampshire, Michigan, and Mexico. We had worked the past with FRX reporting. It worked really well for us. We were able to get our financial reports. Most of them we had to export out and get into Excel to really, use them and be a little bit more flexible with them. But it worked until that solution was taken away from us, actually by Microsoft. And so then at that time, our ERP system recommended another solution for us. But through that, it really didn't work for us. Implementation was very difficult. We ended up reviewing multiple different software vendors, Clarity, F9, HCG, Profix, On Demand, and then BizNet also. The team, we all decided on BizNet, and after our implementation, we were actually up, and within 1 month, all 5 sites were able to start developing reports. The training was very straightforward, and we were all able to build very quickly on top of it. So the products that we're using right now with BizNet is that we're using, of course, the Biz Insights. We are also using Broadcast, and we're using Content Architect. A lot of these, we've been able to use all 3 of these products, integrate them all in together. Of course, with our Biz Insights, we've been able to build quite a few of our cost center reports, a lot of our summary reports that we report up to our parent company, and then also any kind of sub-ledger reports that we'd be able to use those just to be able to tie back to using the general ledger accounts and the balances and be able to tie back to our sub-ledger accounts, kind of integrating them into those reports, which has been very helpful. Okay. So here's like a view of what our monthly cost center report is. Very traditional. We just kind of use just a trend report. We're bringing in the plan numbers, which we actually have in our ERP system. Actually, through this process, we've actually merged with our affiliated company up there in New Hampshire. So right now, the 2 companies that are New Hampshire and actually Texas, being 2 different companies, we're on 2 different SQL databases. Normally, right off the bat, when that actually was starting to be discussed, I got a call from IT. IT asked me right then, saying like, is this going to cause a problem with, the financial statements and all that? And I said, it was like a no-brainer. Actually just kind of said, no, BizNet's going to handle it, no problem at all. We'll have one column for one of them for New Hampshire. We'll have another column for Texas. And we'll be able to add both those together. And we haven't really had any issues with it. It's all kind of gone together. We're even looking at now merging the databases. Even with that, we're now looking at the idea of next year probably having 3 different databases. We will have, you know, the previous merger database of New Hampshire, previous for Texas, and then have a combination of the merged database going into 2016. All this is still going to be able to work together without any problems. Here's a subledger report that we're kind of using where we're kind of reconciling our sales analysis table along with our general ledger accounts. Each month, the sales analysis, kind of data warehouse sales, needs to agree with it, and there's always going to be a few of them that are going to be off. Has in the past been a little bit of a problem of trying to bring in, you know, tables, you know, then trying to compare them together and all. With this, the 2 different locations and 2 different databases, I'm able to all do it in one Excel sheet and be able to figure out. And even as you can see in the red, there's still a few little differences. But with this, I'm able to bring these together. Another report that we'll actually be able to do with Content Architect, we were able to go in, and because of the 2 different databases that we have with New Hampshire and Texas, we were needing a daily sales report. That daily sales report was, both companies had their different views of what they were doing, even different models were considered, but we were able to bring all these in with this Insight and also with Architect. We were able to build our own functions. As you can see, they're up to the right side. I was able to build some of the ones of month-to-date bookings, which would just be the orders. Then I was also able to build some that was saying the month-to-date sales. And then below that is just kind of showing the different arguments that were being put in there, the different parameters that I could sort down to. This report now is being used, and it's actually using all 3 of the tools together. We're able to use BizNet just to be able to bring it all together. But Architect was used to be able to build all the different functions and all the analysis sets and lists. And then daily, we're using BizBroadcast to schedule this report, and it is being scheduled at 4:30, and it's emailed out to about 20 or 30 managers. This is completely self-sufficient. I usually have to only touch it about once a month to modify some very beginning of the month figures. Other than that, it works in the background, sends out the report by email as a PDF to everybody, and works on a great schedule. Another report that we're kind of using is kind of the month of sales by salesperson. Because of some of the functions that I've built in Content Architect, I was able to bring in each of the sales numbers for each salesman, and then with that be able to bring this report together, and then even with BizBroadcast, able to email this out to all of them at the end of each month. We email probably, this is about 20 different sales reps that's able to receive their each individual report. Along with this, we're able to also email out a consolidated report for the different sales managers, so then they can see an overview of the whole group, or these individual reports also. All right, Crystal, that's probably about all that I have right here. Unless you got some more questions.
Not yet. I want to try to hold off on questions if we can until we get towards the very end, make sure that we get through the material today. But thank you so much, Travis, for taking us through some examples of what you've done so far with the solution, and you know, kind of what that looks like. You know, one of the things I'd comment on is that Travis talked about, you know, what the effort is to, first of all, get started and get these reports created. You know, he was up and running and had all those reports created pretty quickly and is able to modify those in a very time-efficient manner. And that's really the whole purpose of what we do here at BizNet, is to help you automate some of those redundant processes that might be going on in your reporting process, and provide that direct connection to your data. So what I want to do today is take you through some case examples very similar to what Travis showed. And the data that I'm working with, of course, is a demo database, so it's not nearly as full as some of the samples that Travis showed today. But I give you a little bit of an idea of really the inner workings in a live environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Excel and bring that over here on the screen, make sure that that gets pulled up and that you guys are seeing that. And as I open up Excel, there are a couple of things that we're going to look at. Okay, I'm going to use some financial examples, but also going to use some sales examples to talk to some of the things that Travis mentioned. But one of the things that I want to do is show you what that effort is to create a difference in the report. You know, for example, when the month closes out, what do you do to update the report? How do we create some of these reports that are filtered by different things like the different cost center or the different sales rep? How do we create some of these consolidated reports when we have multiple companies, or maybe we just want to consolidate, you know, a few different components in our database? How do we schedule these reports to be distributed out, you know, at 4:30 in the morning, like Travis said? And then finally, you know, when we want to create something new, you know, what effort goes into creating those reports? So the examples that we're going to start with today, I'm going to start off with some financial reports to get us started. Everybody should be seeing Excel on the screen at this point. I apologize if there's a slight delay in the GoToMeeting or the GoToWebinar screen, but it should catch up here in just a moment if you guys are seeing a delay. To modify a report and to get it ready to go out for the new month, what we'll do is we'll open that report directly in Excel, okay? And I've got my navigation menu up at the top of Excel minimized just so we get more screen to play with today. So if I wanted that to come back up, I could click on any one of these items and it would pop back down for me. But outside of that, this should look a lot like Excel, what everybody is using today, right? When I want to update a report, it's a matter of opening that item in Excel and changing a parameter. All right, and I'm going to come back and talk about what a parameter is, but just think of it as a filter, okay? As just an item in your report that you can change, and when that change occurs in Excel, BizInsight is going to go retrieve new information based on that item that you've changed. So to Travis's point, when he wants to update his reports, he can go change a period of time in his report, and BizInsight is going to make a new call to his database to bring new data into Excel. Now, outside of things like a period or a year, we can include other types of parameters in our reports. So depending on what you're building, if you're building financial reports, you might want to filter on things like maybe different companies, right? If you're a multi-company organization, you could change a report so that you could look at one company versus another, right? Or maybe you have multiple cost centers, multiple locations, multiple departments or sub-departments. You can include those items in your reports and return data that's very specific to just that one particular thing. Okay? When we get outside of financial reporting, that might be different things like your different salespeople. Maybe you have reports built on different vendors. Maybe you want to look at information by product line. Maybe you want to look at inventory by part. You can include those types of things in your reports and change those items and return data that's very specific to that element that you've chosen. Okay. Now, one of the other things that you can do here, and Travis, you didn't mention this, so it'd be interesting to hear what, you know, how this might work for you guys, or if you really find a need for it. But one of the things that we can do in our reports directly in Excel is get to the detail behind the numbers. So when something seems a little off, if you've got a salesperson who's not performing, or maybe is exceeding expectations, or you've got a part that the margin seems lower than what you'd expect, or if you have excess inventory in a particular item, and you want to drill in and get specific information about that particular element in your report, you can do that directly in Excel. And by drilling down, we can answer very important business questions in a very time-efficient manner, right? So I can drill down, and in this case, maybe I want to look at a detailed list of all the transactions that are making up our sales revenue. Maybe our sales revenue is a lot higher than we'd expect, and we want to see why. We can look in here and see maybe it's just that we had a few extra transactions than we had budgeted for or forecasted for. Maybe the average transaction amount was a lot higher than what we would typically expect. Or maybe we just added a new department or a new location in our organization, and that location is responsible for new revenue, and so we're seeing revenue flow in for the first time from that particular part of the company. But we can drill down and get specific details with a click of a button and answer important business decisions or business questions. Travis, do you guys take advantage of that drill down capability?
Yeah, yes we do, and even last week at Excelpalooza, we kind of got some new ideas to be able to include some of this with our monthly cost center reports going out to the managers so they can have more detail.
Perfect. Good, good, good. So, you know, whether we're building a very summary level report or if we want to look at very detailed information, the idea is that you can do it all directly in Excel. And I didn't talk about why Excel early on, and I don't know if this had anything to do with, you know, Summit's decision necessarily to choose BizNet, but the reason that we're working in Excel, right, is because no matter what other tools you may have in place in your organization today, or what tools you might consider, there's going to be a large audience in your organization who's still going to use Excel every single day. And so we want to take advantage of that, and rather than require that you go learn a whole new tool set and learn a new, you know, user interface for a new software package, we're going to sit directly in Excel. So all of the things that we work with, BizInsight, BizBroadcast, and even Content Architect, as Travis mentioned, those are all Excel add-ins that load directly into Excel but talk straight to the database. Okay, so looking at another example, one of the things I wanted to show here was this idea of a consolidated report when we have multiple organizations, multiple companies, or it could be multiple locations you want to roll up together, or maybe it's you know, different product lines you want to see a summary of. You can point to different things in different cells in your report, right? So in this case, to give you an example, I'm pulling back data for a specific period of time, August, for one particular company. So if you'll notice here, I'm pointing to 2011, period 8, and I'm pointing to this particular company. Now in this particular database, I just happen to have multiple companies set up. So if I go and I look at the next column, I'm pointing to a different company code. Okay, and Travis mentioned this in one of his reports, one of the samples that he showed, where he's got two different companies and then they're doing some calculations to get some consolidations, right? If you're part of an organization where you have different companies or different departments that need to roll up together, sometimes that can be a very big frustration trying to get information from different parts of the database. With BizNet, we really don't care where the data is, right? All we want to know is, what criteria do you need to pull back, right? And in this case, we're pulling back a certain year, a certain period, and a certain company. And then we can set that wherever we want in Excel. And then if we want to do a calculation to get a total, even if that total doesn't naturally exist inside your database itself, you can use all of the Excel functionality that you're used to using, like a sum, right, so that we can get those totals that we're looking for. One of the other things, and we'll look at this in one of the examples that we'll build out here in a minute when we talk about sales data, but we can also bring back data from multiple periods of time. Let me make that a little bit bigger so we can see. There we go. So in this example here, we've got all of our data that's coming back for the current period of August, but we want to look at information that's relevant to August of 2011, which is represented in this column, and we want to look at August of 2010, which is represented in our prior year column. And I'll show you how we build this out here in a moment, but it's important to be able to look at periods of time over different years, or maybe just look at this month versus last month. One of the roles that I had in the company I was with before coming to BizNet, I had to do a lot of this type of analysis for our budget purposes. I was responsible for maintaining our sales and marketing budgets for a franchise sales company. And every year we had this massive Excel spreadsheet. I have to go back and try to figure out year over year, what did we spend on trade shows? What did we spend on print advertising? What did we spend on radio advertising? And it was a very difficult process for me, right? It would have been really nice to have had something that would have allowed me to pull data directly from the database at one period at a time, right, in one column versus the next, and do those quick calculations. And in this case, when the next year rolls over, right, if we want to go back and look at next year, right, 2012 versus 2011, I can change the year, and it's not a valid choice in that drop-down box. That's okay. I'll give us a different example. Let's go back and look at 2010. How about that? And that'll give us the opportunity then to not have to rebuild that whole report, right? All I have to do next year is change that year, and instead of looking at, in this case, we're looking at 2010 and 2009, when I change that to the next year, we're looking at 2011 and 2010, okay? And that's something that can be very difficult to create naturally inside the ERP system and some of the reporting tools that are in those ERP systems. One of the other things that we can do along kind of a similar line is we can add new columns of data to our reports very quickly. So one of the samples that Travis showed was showing a couple of months. I think it went all the way through August, and then there were some other columns that showed some year-to-date and then even some variances. When it comes time to add additional columns to that report, so when September has ended and we need to add September in, since we're working in Excel, all we have to do is pick up this column, and in this case, if this was August, right, we just change it to August, we could pick up this one column, copy it over, it'll bring back September for us. All right. Now, if I wanted to go back and let's say this is January and make that February and do this as a trended report and look at everything year to date, I can do that as well. And that's something that's important. We want to be able to add to our reports very quickly. Okay. And again here, as I mentioned earlier, we can drill down and get to additional information. So if we need to see other things, if we want to draw attention maybe to certain components, we can apply special formatting to our report. In this case, I've done some conditional formatting so that whenever somebody opens this report, they can see that very quickly. Or if I need to pay extra attention to certain things before I send the report out, I can then drill down and get specific details related to that item and have information before I send this off to somebody, right? If we don't typically see, anything show up on that last row of the report, and I want to make sure that when I send this off to somebody like Travis, if he's going to call me back and say, Crystal, can you tell me what's happening? We shouldn't see anything on this row. I want to be able to answer that myself before I send that report to him, right? And it's important to be able to do that. So then the next thing that we want to look at is how do we get some of these reports to other people, right? So Travis mentioned sending reports out on a scheduled basis using BizBroadcast, which is another Excel add-in. It's a distribution tool that we have. With BizBroadcast, we can maintain a list in this workbook that has some rules around what things we're going to send, what filters we're going to apply to those things, and when we're going to send. And in this particular example, we have different people who have different needs, right? Our CEO, for example, wants to see 2 of the sheets in this report. But then our regional managers or our department managers need to see just one particular report, and they need it filtered by their specific location or department. And then maybe our CFO needs to see the entire workbook, the entire financial package. Not only do we have different people who need to see different components in some cases, but then we also have people who need to see it in different types of views, right? Some people want to receive the report as a PDF. Some want to receive the report as an Excel values file so they can continue to do other analysis with the report, right? Maybe they want to insert their own column. I face this frustration. I'm in sales, right? And I get a commission report every single month that shows what commissions were paid to me, right? I got that this morning. But it's sent as a static PDF. So I can't add any calculations or insert rows or any of that fun stuff. So what do I have? I have another Excel document on my desktop that I go into and I manually type in what was paid or what's outstanding or what do I expect for next month, right? So it's definitely a frustration when you want to do your own calculations. You have the flexibility here to send those reports as values-only Excel files. Or if you have somebody in your organization who needs to interact with the data, they need to, for example, to be able to change a filter. They want to be able to drill down and get answers themselves without having to call you back and ask you. You can send the report as a live Excel worksheet or workbook in this case, and that person would receive the report in Excel format that they could drill down on, right? And the idea here is that when we set this distribution list up, this can run on a schedule. Right? So if we wanted to run this at 4:30 every morning, right? That's what you said, right, Travis? That's pretty early. You must have some folks that come into the office early. So we can change that to 4:30 a.m. And if we want that to run on Monday, we can do that. Or in some cases, you may need these reports to go daily, right? So you could choose every day of the week if you wanted to. All right? And if you needed to run a report just at an ad hoc basis, you could always do that with Run Now. All right? So the next thing that we want to take a look at is when we talk about these sales examples, right? And we're kind of coming up on the end of our session today. We will finish on time, I promise. We got 3 minutes still. But when we look at sales data, it's the same idea, right? We open a report. If we want to make a change in the report, we can do that by changing one of the parameters. Since we're working in Excel, we still have all the same Excel functionality we're used to seeing, like charts and graphs and visual representations of data. But if we want to filter the report and look at a specific subset, right, we can do that, right? Or if we want to go back and do a roll-up of everything. We can do that. So let's take a look at how do we build these, right? What did Travis have to do to get these reports set up? So I took a mock-up of one of the samples Travis showed, and I'm going to show how we would build something like that. What we would do is use a connection, and in some cases, BizNet may have already built that connection, and in some cases, you might build that connection, right? In the examples Travis showed earlier, he built those connections, right, using the tool we call Content Architect. That's just our development tool. But when you use that tool, what you're doing is you're building Excel functions that allow us to connect directly to data. And I don't want GL, I want sales data. So in this case, if I want to bring back sales information, I might use something like sales amount by maybe a calendar month. I can bring that, oops, and I put that in the wrong cell. Let me try that again. Month to date actuals. All right, there we go. We can bring that into a cell, and then we can point to the parameters or the filters that will help us get the exact data set we're looking for, okay? And all of these parameters that are listed here are things that if you use the development tool, you can choose what you want to have. But in some cases, this may be provided already with out-of-the-box functionality that BizNet delivers, all right? And I don't have any actual sales reps in my database to work with, so we're going to use territories as the example here, right? So there are actuals for period 8 for 2007. And if we have a plan, I don't have any budget data in here, but let's just say that the plan was to hit $5,000, then we can, of course, do our own Excel calculations here to get the difference, or maybe do a percentage difference. Some people like to see that instead, right? And then you could apply all of the formatting that you want. And if we wanted to do the same thing, but we wanted to do for calendar year, the same concept will apply here. The difference is we don't have to choose a period, all right? So we're not going to go through the entire report sample here in the interest of time, and just wanted to point out how we go about building a report. But the idea would be that you would use these pre-built functions or these pre-built connections to the data to get the data you want into Excel. And then when you're ready to save this report, we save this as an Excel template, an XLTX file. And by doing that, every time you open this report, you'll have the exact same format. You can change an item in the report, like the period, for example, get new data back from the database immediately, and send these out to people who need to see it, all right? And very little effort to, first of all, get it set up, and then to maintain those reports. I thought we might have time for some questions and answers, but it looks like we're wrapping right at the end of the session, and I want to make sure everybody gets back to their day, and certainly want to be respectful of Travis's time today. So if you have questions, please post those in the questions box. I'm going to leave the webinar open for a minute so that you can type those questions if you have them. We will certainly follow up with answers to those questions individually via email, or we may call you if you ask us to. But Travis, as we wrap up, are there any other items that you would like to add or anything you'd like to say?
No, I think you did a great job kind of, showing us more detail about the building of the reports and all.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to everybody for attending, and Travis, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Again, I'm going to leave the webinar session open for a few minutes. Travis, you can certainly drop off. I know you've got some other things to run to, but I'll leave the webinar open so that you can continue to post questions if you're still in the audience, and then we will follow up individually with everybody on those questions that come in. All right. Thank you guys all. Appreciate it.